Hello and welcome to Horseplayers Happy Hour. How about that sound in the background? I hope we're picking up the sound of the bugle right there. Hello and welcome to beautiful Belmont Park. PTF here, sitting at right in front of what they call the top of the stretch here, the picnic area, as it were. Having a great time with this bartender's day out that I'm proud and excited to be a part of as we approach our upcoming third race here at Belmont Park and approach the start of another week's Horseplayer Happy Hour. Not back with you from the Brooklyn Bunker. That'll happen eventually. Actually, that might not happen until September at this point, as I'm getting ready to head up to Maine and then, of course, Saratoga after gallivanting about the UK. But very happy to be back and could not be more pleased than to be joined by a man who usually joins us from an undisclosed location in New England. Today, it appears that he is in a generic hotel room, perhaps in Louisville, Kentucky. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, what's up, man?
Yes, in Louisville, getting ready for Saturday's Winning Your In action at Churchill Downs. So, yeah, it's not quite the normal place set up down in the basement in Maine, but, it'll work for today.
So we're doing another one of these Belmont full card contests. And honestly, everybody thinks I'm a dope because the first one of these shows I came on and said how we were going to try to align with the typical Horseplayers lineup, blah, blah, blah. Not really realizing that the typical Horseplayers lineup doesn't start until after 5 o'clock at this time of the year. Hoping eventually as the year goes on, that's going to get more aligned. But for now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've been having a lot of very positive reaction and good numbers vis-a-vis the all Belmont cards. So, yeah, we're just going to keep that up and running, at least for a little while. Hopefully the entries today will be representative of the crowd's interest in this Horseplayer Happy Hour. So what is Horseplayer Happy Hour? It's a lot of things. It's an interconnected series of contests. We have a prize pool where to be eligible for that prize pool, you only need to play 1 week, honestly, if you happen to do really well and finish in the top 2, or you can accrue points throughout the season and get into our tournament at the end of the year as one way to win a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. You also have the opportunity to win a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat if you're the overall champion and you have the best scores throughout the season. And then, of course, there's a third way to get into the BCBC, which, of course, Matt and I both regard as the best contest there is. That is what you might call the traditional route. This $20 contest is a feeder into Saturday's event, where Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats will be awarded. And best of all, the VIG, the house cut, as it were, it all goes to charity. The Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, 2 charities that we're very proud to support. So, it's sort of a win-win-win for everybody involved. And, we got a leaderboard, which is very exciting. I haven't seen this yet this year, starting with John Twomey, who is off to an excellent start with that 146 points out there at the top. Wendy Long, a very experienced contest player. She's up there with 90 in second. Terry Crump in third, 87. Truls Engebretsen, who was very, very active in these events last year, 78. Mark Wilgard, another vet, 61. PJ Preskenis also played in a lot of these contests last year at 52. Joe Hierchek, 47. Daniel Edwards, 46. Joe Solito, 46. So people are accruing nice points already, including, we'll round out the top 10 here, Peter Savage and Michael Cavada. Actually, we'll give a shout out, too, to Bill Chenford, very active in contests, especially live bankroll contests. And we continue to scroll down and take a look at some of the other people who've accrued points so far. And, this contest is going to continue all the way basically through the Breeders' Cup. And we really appreciate the support, and the numbers have been very strong, and hopefully they're going to be strong in a representative way today. Have you had a look, Matt, at what we're looking at in terms of participation today?
Yeah, they are. And, you hit the nail on the head phrasing it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, we're up to we're at 189 right now. So this is, we continue to live right in that 190 to 200 range. And it does make me wonder a little bit if kind of the crowd, the players are telling us something where, I don't want to say we struggled to get it to the 180s last year. We lived right around 170, somewhere thereabouts. It looks like we might have hopefully it's just an adjustment on the 2-horse right now, who is,
it looks like maybe a girth tightening, I hope.
Co-favorite. Nope, that looks like it's coming right off.
Saddle off, that is, donezo.
So that was your co-favorite right now at 5-2. So good news is if you're playing in the contest, you still have a few minutes to go ahead and make some adjustments. But the 2 is not going to run. It looks like it's a strong embrace.
While we
Again,
talk about things you can do with the few minutes you have left, I'm going to hustle, man. I'm going to say, play another entry. Let's get up to 200. With that $20 buy-in, with the VIG going to charity and all the potential benefits, you can quick cap, you can play all the 4s, like get involved. That's one thing I do like about coming on before these contests start, is that ability to hustle some extra entries. And from a betting point of view, the strong embrace scratch is a bit of a bummer, actually, Matt, because this was a horse I didn't have much interest in based on where she figured to be on the pace map, which was dead last in this spot. So some of the betting interest for me definitely taken out. I would imagine that Solid, the 5, is going to take all the more money with that one out. And I was super boring in here, just thinking it was the 5 or the 7, and most likely the 5. And those are both runners taking plenty of money. I guess 7-2 on the 7 isn't horrendous. What did you think about the spot?
I thought both of these races that we're going to be on for, races 3 and 4, I found them to be difficult to really have a super strong opinion. I ended up going to the 1A, Spooky Road, making the first start from Maker. Definitely light on figs, there's no doubt about that. But I thought, all things considered, this isn't a great group that he's going to be going up against, or she's going up against. And you had some decent form from that maiden score most recently. The 3rd place finisher broke the maiden next out with a 65, and the 4th place finisher earned a 61 in her next start. So if you think maybe that 58 that she earned when she broke her maiden at the fairgrounds at the end of March, if you think maybe with Maker now she can move up to a mid to high 60, I mean, that puts her right there. So, and she's taking some nibbles. She's down to 9-2, and I know a lot of that has to do with scratch. But I thought this race and the upcoming race were difficult to have a real strong opinion. So I said, let's take a shot. I'm going to go with the 1A.
Well, that's funny you mentioned, because I had my friend James and Con, who cashed nicely on Debo in the previous race. I'll tell you, it's kind of a humiliating and funny story what happened. So all the bartenders, like, you do this for a living. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So I constructed a little pick 5, and I'm expecting them, I put 500 in it. I'm expecting them to come in for $5 a piece. Basically, before I knew it, I had 1,000, and I'm 3xing the pick 5 bet, so I can have my stake and I can give everybody action. Did you happen to see the first race, Matt? I did not.
No, I did not.
I did not use it's 2-year-old, so anything can happen. But the Ward runner was hellaciously overbet, like crazy. Somehow 2-5. I mean, it would have been an underlay at even money, and 2-5. I still, like a coward, did use, and this is where I went wrong. I did use the horse as like a backup, because I was like, I can't deal with the questions from 48, people who are liable to serve me drinks in the near future if the 2-5 wins and we don't have it for a penny. And I mean,
Sure.
It's a Ward 2-year-old, so it wasn't like anyway, horse was a terrible underlay. We were right about that one not winning, but the winner, not one that I had anywhere in my reckoning, and Anthony Dutrow, first time starter. I think the horse was called Redefined or something like that. Anyway, absolutely knocked me out of everything to get started here. But so I'm not feeling so smart. But then James ends up coming back. He hits Debo for a nice bet in the second race, and he was asking me about your runner here. And I was like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not against the horse exactly, but it's not who I came up with. I'm like, I'm 5'7", 7'5" all day. And he's like, well, not even a little bit. Do you like Spooky Road? I was like, well, I said, I'll be honest with you. I've been looking at all these races. I would have to study the PPs and give you that opinion. But anyway, I told him, don't listen to me. Like, I got us busted out in the first leg of the pick 5. Go and bet the horse. You like the horse? Go bet the horse. So it's good that, we've got a couple people with money riding on the 1. I'm hoping I can get the 7-5-5-7 exacta in and save some face in front of the bartenders as they've broken from the gate here in this third race at Belmont. Are you happy enough with where you are? Did you expect to be coming from that, not hellaciously far back, but mid to late pack here?
Yeah, I wasn't fully in agreement with the Timeform US pace projector. They had this one up, basically sitting in second, just off the leader. That seemed a little aggressive to me. This seems kind of more on the reasonable side, where they're coming from 3 or 4 off of it, and we'll find out if you're good enough. I think in a race like this, it all depends on how much pressure they're applying to the pace setter. 23 flat or 23-1 for the opening quarter, but this one's all by himself on the front end, or herself, I should say. I would appreciate the 7 applying a little bit of heat right now. but they're going an honest enough clip for this level.
It is right at a mile and a 16th. This is not slow. I think the 7 is traveling pretty nicely into the race. The 5 appears to have horse to me, and then, yeah, I mean, it's all to play for. It's going to depend on what happens to these internal fractions. That half going up in 46 and 1. We'll see. The way this favorite was bet late, I wouldn't be surprised at all if she ends up finding. I also wouldn't be terribly surprised if this ends up being a 2-speed number here with the 5 and the 7, as we do have Radiant Gem making a bid down on the inside there. Let's see what happens here in deep stretch. It looks like Solid is finding to me, but yeah,
what a trip for the 6.
Yeah, this horse is.
She got shut off 4 different times. She's only going to lose by. She never got to run. Oh, I feel terrible for anybody who had the 6.
Do you think now that was dead tight in the end between the 5 and the 4? Do you think the 5 holds?
Honestly, I'd have to go back and look at it again. I was looking at the 6 who was in behind.
Yeah, this is a dead tight finish. I think it's going to be just 5 and 4 with Radiant Gem, who, clearly that pace was starting to come apart a little bit at the end there. We'll see. We'll see what numbers they hang up here in a second.
Now, when you take, and then obviously it's hard to do it on the fly, but am I making too much of this trip for the 6 where it feels like she never got a chance to stretch her legs?
No, I mean, the 6 is in a vice for a good long period of time.
And she sees a little daylight here at the end, and she still can't really go.
Yeah, no, that was a bad trip.
Oh, you're right. That's very close.
What do you think? I'm hoping it's just 5-4 for the people. I did mention the 4 is my 3rd pick, so I'm hoping somebody.
I think the 4 got the bob. I don't know if it was enough to get the nose down in front.
One of my guys is signaling me that he thinks the 4 won.
Yeah, I think the 4 got the bob. I don't think there's any argument there. I just don't know if it was enough to get ahead of the 5.
Let's see if they just hold or what happens here. Meanwhile, we can talk about some of the questions and comments coming in. Trish Smith, a longtime commenter who we always appreciate, going to be in Vegas this weekend, heading to a sports book. Any advice for a best bet on sports this weekend? What have you looked at anything that you're excited about sports betting wise?
I'm trying to think. I mean, we're really kind of in I don't want to call it the dog days of summer, but we're getting close. It's baseball and horses, and we're doing the horse part right now. The Open's coming up in a couple weeks. I haven't seen what some of the prices look like. And Pete, this is not an encouraging sign that the 4 is being shown.
The cameraman seems to think it's all about the 4. They haven't posted anything yet.
Oh, we're having a bit of a look from the.
Maybe this is about what happened with the 6.
I mean, I just don't think the 6 ever had anywhere to run. I don't know that that's anyone's fault.
Yeah, it seemed just like your more standard phone booth stuff. Oh, wow. Who was that coming over? There was definitely some argy-bargy there. The 4 finished first. And this is all about the 6 and the 7, the inquiry. So looks like Radiant Gem will get the job done there for those of you that backed that one. And then I think they're looking at the 3rd and 4th place finishers, and there was some crazy stuff. While they sort this out, Matt, did you have an early thought on the Open?
Well, I'd have to go back and take a look at some of the prices out there. He's been in just wretched form, but this feels like a Jordan Spieth kind of track. I mean, he played very well there a few years ago when he just missed out on the playoff, or he got into the playoff and lost to Zach Johnson. I don't remember off the top of my head how it played out, but his form has just been so bad. But I do think there is something to the idea that St. Andrews has a little bit of that. It's not even horse for course. It's that you can just, as long as you miss the bunkers, you can kind of blast it anywhere you want. Just don't miss right. And that's sort of anybody that's never really paid attention to golf, but specifically the old course. You can go as far left as you want, basically on every hole. You just can't go right. And, again, it's easier said than done when you're not really feeling it. But I'd have to take a look at it a little bit more. I'm sure he's got to be a decent price. He can't be among, I can't imagine being less than 35 or 40.
Anything baseball wise in terms of divisions or World Series? I mean, I haven't looked at prices lately. One team that I definitely have my eye on in general, they've been terrible, and when last I looked, and I haven't been studying it as much since the last couple of weeks. I've just been looking at scores. I haven't been looking at the standings. But, I was a big White Sox guy for that division to start the year. And everything has gone wrong, and they've been terrible. And they're still only like 6 games out. If you can start to get a price on a team like that for that division or anything else in the American League, like just sort of by default, if you said to me, I'm going to Vegas, I have to make a sports bet, that's one thing I might take a look at.
Yeah, and I guess I've been so just caught up in what's been going on in the AL East for selfish reasons, but I will say they have major flaws. But for Boston to have started as terribly as they did, and to be where they are, they're 10 games over 500 now. They're not going to catch the Yankees. The Yankees at this point, it feels kind of like their pennant in the AL to lose. But we've seen crazier things happen. I believe Boston started 9-20 or 9-21, something like that. So they're 43-33 now. I mean, they've gone on a proper 760 kind of run for the past month and change. So they're playing good ball. They definitely have flaws. There are a number of things that you can point to and say this is going to be sort of their Achilles heel come October or even the stretch run through September. But I'd be curious what their price is right now. Again, they can't be much shorter than 35 or 40, just given all the other teams in play. It's the difficult thing about the summer. We all love the summer, and again, it's great that we've got great racing. But outside of baseball and some of the golf tournaments even, and now who knows what's going on with all sorts of different things going on with different leagues, it becomes difficult to really get stuck into anything. I know with NBC, the pod that they do daily, they're going to 3 days a week during the summer just because, there's only so much baseball we can dive into,
Right. There's not nearly as much. So here's our program. We'll do a few more questions. We're going to do the open for the late week show that we've been doing, and we'll talk about the Princess Rooney and the other win and urine race, the Stephen Foster, and then we might have time to do our look back at Breeders' Cup too, all before Breeders' Cup win and urine action from last weekend, all before we get to the next race at Belmont. So a couple more questions. Oh my gosh, Wayne Harrison has been giving me the hardest time, and now he's giving you the hardest time too, Matt. I guess on this show at some point we advised against the 7-1 for Flightline.
Yes.
Look, I understand that his price now is theoretically shorter than 7-1, but I'm not sure how much I want to bet at 7-1 now on Flightline. There are a lot of questions about this horse who gets wrapped in cotton wool between his starts. Obviously now if somebody said 7-1, I'd say, well, if you like him, bet it. But I still wouldn't be like, oh my God, that's the bet of the year. Where do you stand on this issue?
No, and I saw Wayne's comment, and fair play. I don't remember what price Wayne got Flightline at, but to your point, even at 7, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I think he proved.
You're even more negative than me.
Well, but he proved he basically kind of squashed my doubts, my fears about how's he going to travel, how's he going to do this, that, and the other. He overcame adversity. He ran a hole in the wind still. I still don't really have much concern about distance, but the fact of the matter is, mile and a quarter is a lot different than a one-turn mile. And I'm not arguing that he's not the most likely or the most brilliant horse in this division. But boy, 7-1, depending on how things shake out, you could probably still get 2 or 2.5 to 1 day of. And I just
gotta figure,
or unless he does something crazy in the P Classic and this older division just kind of falls apart and the 3-year-olds don't really sort themselves out. Maybe he goes off at 8-5, but he's not going to be an odds-on horse in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And for me, I would need something massive. I was actually going to text you, and it'll be a horse that we'll talk about in a little bit if you were still over there to get down on. But then I thought about it and I said, do I really want to get stuck into 25 or 30 and hope that this horse over the next 4 months turns into what I think he could? I'm not getting enough return on my investment there. And Wayne, if you think 7-1 is a massive overlay, good on you. Take it. To me, I think you still need a lot to go right for that to represent value on Breeders' Cup weekend.
All right, good stuff. We got more questions, but I think we should let's do the show open. Let's do 10 minutes on the 2 WAYI races, and we'll start off.
Thank you, Pete.
All right, we got some winners. We got some winners, sir. I guess I did. They knew they were smart enough to box it. I don't think I would have on that. I like the 4 more for underneath, but the boys got it done. that's all that matters.
Yell over to them and tell them the boxes are for shoes.
It worked that time, so we'll take it. All right. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for the first weekend of July, basically. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatow, back with you, not at the Brooklyn Bunker, but at Belmont Park. We're doing a little double duty here because we're in the middle of Horseplayer Happy Hour, but we're going to use this segment to kick off the late week show. Very happy to be joined, as ever, on Horseplayers Happy Hour, which you should all be participating in. Horseplayers.com, the website, to sign up for these games. They happen every Thursday. And whenever we're both around, I do these shows here with my man, TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, we've been enjoying the show so far and excited to talk about these WAYI races, one of which you have made a little bit of a trip to travel for.
Yes, down in Louisville, Kentucky, getting ready for the Stephen Foster on Saturday, 4 o'clock Eastern. NBC will have this race as well as the two races prior, the Kelly's Landing and the Fleur de Lis, but the Stephen Foster, certainly the main event. And like I say, it's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Those looking for more coverage on this awesome Churchill card, check out In the Money Plus, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Matt and I will be talking about all these races, but on the main show here and on Horseplayer Happy Hour, we're going to keep our focus on the Stephen Foster, which I'm very curious to see return to the races of Mandaloun. But the horse I was going to pick, Matt, is one I've been speaking of in pretty glowing terms throughout the season, a horse who I feel like is ready for his close-up. That's number 3, Olympiad. This horse has tactical speed. He's got finishing ability, and I think he's ready to win a big test like this and go on to a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic as a serious contender. How do you feel about Olympiad and all the rest in the Stephen Foster?
Look, Olympiad is in raging form right now. He's done nothing wrong going 2 turns for Bill Mott. From a speed figure standpoint, he fits. He is rock solid and consistent. I noted on my show earlier in the week, I don't think it's going to be an issue on Saturday, but the only times he's not been able to procure that position where he's up sort of pressing the pace, he hasn't fired. And again, not that it's going to happen on Saturday, but food for thought going forward. If for whatever reason he runs into a race where he's not sitting first or second or even third by a length or a length and a half, I'd be curious to see how he boxes on. That's not to say that I don't like him in here. He's arguably the most likely winner. I can't get past, and I've got one more handicapping piece that needs to come out on Friday afternoon before I really cement things down. But I've just been taken by American Revolution for a long time. And I looked at that blame most recently, and I said it on my show leading in that week. You know, that wasn't the plan for this horse. Todd Pletcher wanted to run him in New York, in a New York bred stake. The commentator, it didn't fill. They needed to call an audible. They went there, and I got to be honest, I thought he ran like a short horse. So, and actually, Todd was on with Ren Carruthers earlier this week talking about Future Stars Friday, but they talked about this horse for this race this weekend. And he all but said that. He goes, he got a little bit tired at the end. We thought it was a good starting off point. We expect him to move forward here. I think the most intriguing thing to me about this horse is perhaps the Timeform US pace projector, which, to my surprise, actually has him on a clear lead. If he gets out to the front and is by himself, I would be, very, very pleased. Put it that way, at the top of the lane. I just think he's got an immense amount of ability. I think he's a true router. And he may be the third choice in this race behind Olympiad and Mandaloun.
Anything else in here you're interested in? It may be more of a price to get involved, second or third, or do you think the top 3 in the market kind of have it between them?
I think the top 3 are the horses to beat. I'm really intrigued with Caddo River to see what he does. Part of me still doesn't believe that he's truly a 1 1/8 horse against this kind of competition. But boy, his last 2 runs have been really good. The most recent one was a 1-turn mile, and maybe that's what he actually ends up being when all is said and done, which won't help him on Saturday. But the fact that Brad Cox runs him here, knowing that Mandaloun, the big horse, is waiting in the wings, I think that speaks volumes from a confidence standpoint. He's really interesting to me. I don't know that I have the sort of gumption to bet him or back him in a spot like this. This may be the prove it time, but he's looked so good in basically 3 of his last 4 starts. He's probably the wild card in here for me outside of the top 3.
Let's pause on Mandaloun for a minute. Disappointing when last seen in Saudi Arabia, but of course you and I both have history with being, supporting him and backing him at a big price in a Kentucky Derby that he was ultimately awarded. Didn't do any good for our pocketbooks. But what do you make of Mandaloun? It feels like the kind of horse that is going to be bet hard enough that it's hard to imagine him being like great value and is obviously a contender. But if I held your feet to the fire, are you pro or con at this point?
From a gambling standpoint, con. I think he's going to be an underlay in here based on what he has accomplished on the racetrack versus the competition he'll face on Saturday. But also just purely from a racing standpoint, I'm a little bit against him because I maintain he needs to prove that he can do it against this caliber of company. He's yet to do that. I mean, his 2 grade ones have both been elevated via disqualification. The Louisiana, I thought he ran really well. He and Midnight Bourbon both, but they went very, very slow and is effectively a match race. And then he completely dropped, an egg in Saudi. And I don't know what you want to do with that now. First start off the bench, 1 mile and an eighth against good company. And I still don't know if he's mentally put it all together. I feel like I've said that every time we talk about him, that he was quirky last year. I still don't know that he's not quirky at this point, that maybe he doesn't want to get the job done. I'm hopeful that he runs well, but I don't think I'll be betting him on Saturday.
I think that's a fair assessment, in my opinion, not far off of yours. That's not the only win in your in race. That one, of course, for the Classic, we've also got the Princess Rooney going on down at Gulfstream Park. Goes as race number 10, return to the races of a Breeders' Cup champion in CC, who's going to be a very short price installed at 4 to 5 on the morning line. Might actually even be shorter than that. I wonder, though, Matt, I mean, I guess we've said this before about CC in races that didn't appear to have a lot of pace, that, she might be compromised, and she has a way of going ahead and getting the job done anyway in plenty of them. But I don't know. At the likely prices, what about a runner like Glass Ceiling, who's got that ability to sit a little bit more handy and still has finishing ability and clearly loves the 7 furlongs of this test? I'm tempted to take a mild shot maybe against my old friend CC in this spot with Glass Ceiling. How do you see it?
I mean, I will say CC is getting back to doing what I think she does best. That's 1 turn, 7/8 of a mile. Stating the obvious, she won the Breeders' Cup doing this exact thing last year, and she's won at Gulfstream in the past. She won this race last year. I'm against her as well, but not with Glass Ceiling, and it's not because I don't agree with everything you're saying. I think Charlie Baker does as good a job as anyone, especially given the amount of sort of runners that he has in comparison to some of the big barns. I think she makes plenty of sense in here. I was most interested, though, in the filly on the inside, the 3-year-old. And I don't know, certainly on numbers, she's not fast enough yet. But, boy, she's so lightly raced. Spirit Wind, I thought she was spectacular in that most recent race. She goes, I know it's a Florida bred run in the musical romance, but she was spectacular. It was her first time passing horses. She looked like she was only getting stronger as the race went on. And the Timeform US Pace Projector has her on a loose lead that is favoring horses on or near the front. And I wonder if this is the sort of horse that you need in a division like this, where I feel like we have a lot of known commodities. We have the CCs of the world. We have some of these other fillies and mares that have turned back in distance. We kind of know what they are. Maybe you need a fresh face to step up and say, hey, what about me? I can take a chance in here. That's no disrespect to Glass Ceiling or the filly on the outside, Make Mischief. I just think Spirit Wind's really interesting, and I'm hopeful she's going to be somewhere around 5 or 6 to 1.
I think she will be, Matt, because looking at her finals, they don't really measure up like at all. But as you point out, that pace figure from the run 2 back, of course, there were timing issues the last day, so we don't have like a complete pace line. But based on the pace line 2 days back, that's where they're coming up with that idea that she could be loose and lonely in here. And it's not like Glass Ceiling is necessarily going to be, I mean, you're not going to let her get too far away, but it's not like she's going to be out in front of her either. So off that pace angle, if you gave me, I mean, frankly, I think I'd want more like a double figure price. I don't know that that's going to emerge, but it honestly wouldn't shock me if you're talking about 8 or 9 at least, just based on the final figures. And yet, you make money in this game when the final figures aren't the figures that tell the story you want to tell, and you make a compelling case for Spirit Wind. I'm going to go with Glass Ceiling. I do think that CC, very, very interesting, and potential horse to repeat in a race like the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. It just doesn't feel like the pace is going to be her friend this day. It's not a day. We so often talk about the cutback and how great of an angle the cutback is. This might be a case where the cutback is not particularly what I want to see in a 7 furlong test without abundant speed. Do you think I might be on to something with that as a potential weakness for CC?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you always have to factor that in. I suppose, kind of going against the grain a little bit, though, it's not like she had a great deal of pace to run at in the Breeders' Cup, and she went off and ran the best race of her life.
Oh, she's so good.
So she has shown that she can overcome a bit of adversity, and Michael McCarthy's done a fantastic job. I understand why they've stretched her out before. She's won going a route of ground. And these 7/8 races, they're so few and far between throughout the year for the fillies and mares that you kind of almost have to work backwards and say, all right, well, we want that spot, that one. How do we get there? But this is, make no mistake about it, this is what she is. She is a one-turn filly. And to your point, yes, maybe she's a little bit pace compromised, but purely on class, she is the class of the field by a long shot. So I think CC is the most likely winner. I think Glass Ceiling makes sense in here. And I will say, to button up Spirit Wind, if she had run 10, 11, 12 times, I don't think I would be so anxious or giddy to go and play her because I don't think we've seen the best of her just yet. That's why I'm going to give her a look on Saturday.
As a 3-year-old, clearly has that upside. Hasn't been seen in 42 days. We've seen how these 3-year-olds can improve leaps and bounds as the year goes on. Well, there you have it. That's our coverage of the 2 Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races on Saturday. And with that, I think we can take a little bit of a look back if producer Craig is ready for us. I had a chance at Ask It. Just it was one of those funny things. You meet all these interesting people, and I happened to meet a guy who's just a tremendous Japanese racing fan. From his knowledge, I assumed he worked in the business, but he's a guy who travels around the world watching horses run and having a great time. And he was certainly doing that at Ask It and helped us out with a little thing we recorded for Sky. And I think we should go now and throw to his assessment of last weekend's Breeders' Cup Win and You're In action from Japan. Coverage looking at the Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races from around the globe. A man who is a real racing enthusiast. He's actually coming to us from London, not Japan, where he also resides. Very excited to have with us to talk about last weekend's Win and You're In action. Haruhiko Matsuda, how are you, my friend?
Thank you very much for having me. It's been amazing. I think we met at Ascot. We had a great week there as well, and I'm very happy to speak about Takarazuka Kinen today.
Yeah, it was a very exciting race, and a race with major global implications. Can't wait to talk to you about that. It was won, of course, by title holder. How did this horse look? How did title holder get the job done last weekend?
Oh wow, it was amazing actually. So Takarazuka Kinen has been on his radar, on the horse and the owner's radar for a long time. They won 2 major races to that race. Kikkasho last year in October, and Tenosho I think it was May this year. They won by I think it was 5 to 7 length. It was quite a big win, and they were really looking forward to Takarazuka Kinen. I think the goal was, if they win Takarazuka Kinen, it opens up the opportunities for international chances running and in races such as the Breeders' Cup. And they were very happy that they've won the Breeders' Cup turf opportunity by winning Takarazuka Kinen.
This race was a win and you're in for the Longines turf, as you point out. But as we've seen from European runners over the year, this is true also in Japan, where as much as the Breeders' Cup, of course, is a prestigious race and a goal, there's another little race in France that sometimes takes precedence in terms of the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. Do you imagine that will be the circled target for a title holder, and then they'll reevaluate after that? And how do you think title holder would stack up in a giant international test like the Arc?
Well, so for a fan of Breeders' Cup like myself, it's slightly unfortunate that the owner, Mr. Okada of title holder, has announced almost immediately after the winning that title holder will be going to L'Arc de Triomphe, which may mean, logistically speaking, that attending Breeders' Cup turf, even though it's a great opportunity, is a challenge. But looking at L'Arc de Triomphe, title holder has been almost bred to win at races like L'Arc de Triomphe. It loves to race mid to long distances. It loves when the condition isn't so perfect. In fact, it's been trained day and night, actually, when title holder was young, to deal with challenging circumstances in the small farm in Hokkaido. So, what I think title holder has a great chance of bringing in win at the L'Arc de Triomphe.
How do his form figures stack up to some of the Japanese runners that have had international success over the years?
Ooh, that's a good question. So if I may drop in some big names, so winning Kiktasho, as I mentioned, and Tennosho, and Takarazuka Kinen, three big races in a row. It's last time it was 16 years ago by Deep Impact, if I studied that correctly. So it's huge. I think it's a good horse and has a great opportunity in winning the race.
Deep Impact, obviously a legend, and anytime you can get mentioned in the same breath with him, you're doing something right. Who knows? They haven't ruled out the idea of a Breeders' Cup tilt after the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, right?
No.
I mean, it's an ongoing concern.
Right. In fact, Breeders' Cup is happening in Kentucky, East Coast United States, which is close, relatively speaking, to France or Europe. So it's not as a challenge. So when distance is a challenge, I think. We must admit, traveling from Japan to East Coast United States could be a challenge. But if title, if title holder is already in Europe, maybe it's just a flight away.
It's a very interesting point, and perhaps I didn't really think about this, but some of the Japanese success at the Breeders' Cup last year, maybe they were helped by the fact that the Japan to Del Mar is easier than Japan to Kentucky. There've obviously been other Breeders' Cup win-in-your-in races from Japan as well. As far as you know, and I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire here, I know it's too early for this, but does it sound like we might see a few Japanese participants at the Breeders' Cup overall, whether from the other win-in-your-in races or maybe just in general?
Well, I think the rumor is that the winner of Yasuda Kinen, Songline, may be joining Breeders' Cup. It's a mile, if I understand correctly.
Yep.
It's been announced once, but I haven't been hearing much about it recently. So let's see how it goes. But it's a big race, an exciting race. So I look forward to either Songline or perhaps even title holder participating in Breeders' Cup.
Now, what are the odds of us seeing you and your lovely wife at the Breeders' Cup this year? Any chance you'll be making the trip over?
Oh, is this? Can I regard this as your invitation?
Oh, absolutely. We can make it happen.
I think we'll be there.
Fantastic. Really loved meeting you at Ask It. Love talking about this stuff, and obviously with all the JRA participation around the world, and not just that, but the coverage that we're doing of the JRA races themselves. We're taking a break until October, but it's been so fun covering this stretch of the season, and we look forward to doing it again in the fall. And if you don't mind, we say around here, no good deed goes unpunished. We'll be bothering you again soon.
I look forward to that. I had
Cheers,
such
my
fun.
friend.
Thank you very much.
My mic was muted that whole time, wasn't it? I pulled the JK.
No, your mic may have been muted, but I've been battling internet connectivity issues here at the hotel, so we're good. We're all.
Oh, good stuff. I was just saying about Haruhiko, how much fun it was meeting him, and not unlike with Callum Hallowell the other week. Like, it's just so great to get these perspectives of people who are living and dying in these races. And yeah, I hear your voice fine, Matt, but you are your video appears to be a poster at the moment.
I'm hopeful it's moving. I feel like it's starting to move a little bit on my feed anyway. I did hear Songline's name come up, and she's been one to travel about. So I would love the possibility of seeing her at Keeneland in the fall, running in the mile. I think that'd be really interesting, and it sounds like she may not be the only filly should she go there. Chad Brown has sort of intimated that Regal Glory could be one that could end up in that spot. Sounds like she's going to run against the boys up at Saratoga. And, I think there's a long way to go for so many of these divisions, but it's always good to hear possible international participation for any of the Breeders' Cup races.
It's exciting, and I do hope that the Keeneland location does not discourage much, if any, participation. I mean, with enough planning, hopefully that'll work out. And maybe in the case of title holder being, if him being in Paris a couple weeks before, who knows? Maybe that will create an easier occasion to get him to the big dance. Unlikely, I understand that, reading between the lines. And, Sadashi also obviously very unlikely, but it'd be fun if we can continue the Japanese participation. One of the great things about the Breeders' Cup is that international competition that we get to see. And yeah, we're going to continue to follow all the Win and You're in action, not just on Horseplayer Happy Hour, but across the In the Money Media Network. 2 minutes to race 4 here at Belmont Park. I suppose we should talk about this race a little bit. Matt, what did you come up with in here?
Well, we talk about pace, and I mean, is it too obvious that Musical America is all by his lonesome on the front end? I mean, who else is going to run with this one? Maybe this horse isn't quite what he once was, but I mean, you've got a victory 4 back, albeit against much lesser, against 10 claimers instead of 25 claimers, but there's no other speed in this race. And he would be the kind of horse that if I were playing in this contest, I'd look at him and go, okay, you know what? Maybe he doesn't win, but if he goes off at 10 or 11 or 12 to 1 or 15 to 1, like the morning line suggests, and he wins and I don't have him, and it was Captain Obvious, lone speed on paper, I'm going to feel like a dope. So that's where I would go. I would go with Musical America.
He's very, very solid value at that price. I couldn't get off of Crypto Cash. I mean, I was expecting a short price. The current number is, short enough, I suppose, at 3 to 5. But I mean, this is the most likely winner and the horse that I'd want to come with him. I mean, maybe this could be the 2 runs down the 5, and you keep the 5 in there in second or third to juice up your verticals a little bit. Anybody else you're interested in?
Well, I did think Grump's Little Tots was mildly intriguing. I don't know that I love 7 to 2 in here. He's over set at Belmont Park. The distance I don't think is an issue for him. It's just more a matter of what version of him are you going to get. And at this point in his career, is a low 80 good enough to win in a race like this? I guess that kind of brings it back to Crypto Cash, because if you believe it's a low 80, then Crypto Cash is by no means a 3 to 5 shot. The 3 to 5 shot is based on that 92 buyer and now claimed by Rob Atris's ball. Again, to your point, probably the most likely winner, but 3 to 5 is way too short.
Yeah, it's a little goofy. It's a little goofy. So your preference would just be to focus on the 5 and forget about it. I think messing around with 2-5. I think Grump's Little Tots is too short at 3 to 1. I mean, pace compromised. You mentioned the stat about sort of the anti horse for course. I mean, I think you might be able to bet that horse out of there and do okay in this spot. So that's what I'm thinking as we approach post.
Put it this way: if this were the BCBC, I would be playing a 5 over 2-3 exacta, and then a 2-3 over 5 exacta.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'd probably play the 5 to win a bit, just in case he does win, and for whatever reason, the 2 shorties run out.
Wayne chimed in with another question I wanted to get to. He's bringing up this idea that I hear a lot that I swear, would love to do the deep dive on the data, but it does not have the ring of truth to me. This idea that the Dubai track takes tolls on horses. Wayne seems to have done some digging. Says he's looked back at a list of horses to run in Dubai and feels like it might cause them issues. He name checks Dubai Millennium, but, questions whether or not the Dubai track, can set a horse up for success the rest of the season. I feel like just, again, it's all anecdotal. Like I'd love to sit down and really look at the data, but my sense is I could give you just as many positive cases of horses who came from Dubai and continued to run well as ones that ran poorly. And I'm not really concerned about it at all for Life is Good or anybody else. Where do you stand on this question, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a case by case basis. To your point, we've seen certain horses come back and look even better than when we saw them over there. And we've seen other horses come back and need a few starts, and it kind of puts them behind the 8 ball for the rest of the season. As far as this horse is concerned, Life is Good. My biggest issue, or my biggest worry anyway, is that we saw not necessarily the track take anything out of him or this little time off since then. It's that we may have just seen the limitations of how far he wants to go. Going back and watching the tape of that race again and again, I can't help but think he just got short, that he hit his wall. He's a 1 1/8 type. I was wrong. I thought he would easily handle a 1 1/4. And I don't think he did. For him to finish as flat as he did, that would lead me to believe that maybe that 1 1/4 is not really what he wants.
That's the obvious answer. It really is the obvious answer.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but I do think that there's an element of, don't overthink it. What did our eyes tell us? He's cruising along, and then all of a sudden he hits a wall. There's probably a reason for that. And the fact that they bring him right back at 7/8 when he comes back over here. The real question is what happens on Saturday. Because if he runs a hole in the wind there, you're almost obligated to try the Whitney, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure.
And who knows if that's really what his game is. Saratoga 1 1/8. I think he can do it, but, crazier things have happened.
We'll dive into that race, much deeper, but it is a good point. I think this is one where it's going to be in Pletcher, I trust, because I agree. The obvious solution is he didn't stay, but there's also people who've creditably posited the idea that the rail kind of flipped on that track as it went from day to night, and the temperature dropped a lot. And by the time, even though the rail was good early, or at least not bad early, that by the time that the big race happened, it was actually kind of quicksandy. And if Todd Pletcher decides he's going to continue to stretch that horse out, I'm not going to rule him out. So, yeah, a lot yet to be determined. And, pace lines and other things will play into this as well, as they are off in our 4th race here at Belmont. And Musical America has some company on the lead in the form of number 1A Mount Travers, but is certainly getting a nice trip, Matt. Obviously, you'd probably prefer to be alone, but you can't be too upset about where you are.
No, but you know what? I'll tell you, I really appreciate that I don't want to say we're seeing a rabbit, but we're kind of seeing a rabbit in a way of a horse going out there and applying some pressure. Maybe Mount Travers wins. I don't know. But if nothing else, he's going to make life a little bit easier for Dark Storm if Dark Storm's good enough. I just like to see an honestly run race. I'm fine with that, even if I lose. I'd like to see more of this.
Yeah, truly run race is something that kind of benefits everybody. You got to figure that Crypto Cash is, more or less licking his chops. Now, I've got a very small video. Does it look like he's being asked and maybe taking a second to respond? He's responding now, and he's just being handwritten. He's still got, he's not responding as much as I'd like at 2 to 5, if I'm being honest here. What do you think? Is the favorite beat?
Yeah, I think the 2 is done. Now it's a matter of, is Musical America going to go and run this horse down on the front, or are you going to have somebody like Grump's Little Tots?
Yeah, I think Grumps, the horse I badmouthed, he's paddling a little, but I think he's going to come through.
I think he's going to get there. He's going to grind away, but
second 2 to 5 shot, absolutely terrible today, and this one is going to come in 3-1A, and I do think the big favorite will save third at 2 to 5. Boy, that was some real woof stuff from the favorite, for whom the race should have been run to suit.
Well, and this is another sort of study in taking a look at figs and why I wouldn't just marry yourself to one set of figures and say they're the end all be all. If you go and take a look at the most recent run, this horse finished second and earned a 92 buyer speed figure. Timeform US had the fig as a 101. Now, granted, that's not including the pace scenario. They had a very, very slow pace early on. So theoretically, that would bump up that 101. But the 101 is in line with all of the 3 most recent runs from this horse, a 105, a 106, a 104. The corresponding buyers were 80, 83, and 85. The 92, to me, was probably somewhere about 10 points too high. You take it down to an 82, this horse is not a 3 to 5 shot in any world.
No, it's a great point. As far as the winner, I think we did a special show for Belmont today, because of course we have this pick 6 carryover that I suppose we should have talked about a little bit there ahead of its beginning. because it started there, and it's certainly off to a good start. But I think it was Nick Tamaro on the show with me just made the point about Grump's Little Tots being a horse that might benefit tremendously from the switch to Rosario. And I think that's a very legit point. When you have a horse that on the pace figures it was the second best rated coming in terms of late pace, and you put Rosario on there, good things can happen, and they certainly did there if you back Grump's Little Tots, who I was not smart enough to come up with.
Well, and we were talking about Charlie Baker early on. I mean, this is his first time going out for Baker's Barn off of a bit of a layoff, and again, anytime you can pick up Joel with a horse that might need a little bit of help at the end, he's as good as it gets.
No better finisher in the game. It's not his only trick in his bag, but it's certainly something he does very, very well. We do have time for a couple more questions if folks want to hit us with those, and then I think we'll do the leaderboard, and we'll get out of here right on time today. We did have Rob Capalbo, our buddy, who hopefully we'll see up at some live events in Saratoga. He had Grump's Little Tots there, and we'll be moving up on the leaderboard. We did have a question about Jack Christopher and his ability to get the classic distance. Off the top of my head, it certainly seems plausible, and he's in the right hands where if, Chad Brown says that he thinks he can do that, I'm not going to be one to question him. What do you think about Jack Christopher going 10 furlongs?
I mean, the pedigree says no, but at the same time, what he did in the Woody Stephens, and depending on what the field looks like in a few weeks' time at Monmouth for the Haskell, he's going to be the favorite, even if early voting shows up there. It sounds like, based on something I read earlier this week, and apologies, I'm sure it was Dave Grenning, but don't quote me there, in the Racing Form, chatted with Chad, and Chad alluded to the fact that Zandon is going to go in the Jim Dandy. Now it's a matter of, does early voting go there or the Haskell with Jack Christopher going down to Jersey? I think Jack Christopher has shown an element of brilliance. 10 furlongs, man, that's a long way to go. But I think we're going to find out a lot in a few weeks' time. If he goes out and blitzes the field down at Monmouth Park, then all bets are off. I mean, I think sky's the limit for a horse like that.
Yeah, he's just been so good. I mean, you make the point about the pedigree. Munnings by a half hour's dam, but the half hour's dam has had winners going a little bit further. I don't know. It doesn't seem right, but I mean, we've seen this. I feel like on the regular, we see Chad Brown have horses that run so well on the turf that don't particularly have turf breeding. So would it shock me if he could get a horse that, wants more like 8 or 9 to go 10 under the right circumstances? No. I mean, it reminds me of some of the Derby winners we've seen, and that quote from one of my interviews with Brad Cox, where he said, these days at the sale, when they look for classic horses, the pedigree might say 1 mile and a 16th, and that's kind of what they're looking for. They want that kind of speed, but they can train them to get that extra distance, and we'll see. We'll see what happens as far as that goes. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Certainly be interesting to see, and we'll get some big clues. Can't wait. I'm going to be at the Haskell this year. Going to be down there with our pals at Monmouth and our friends from the Bet Makers, and getting a chance to, really not unlike today, do a little bit of party hosting and hanging out. Just got to figure out how to get to and fro Saratoga. So we're working on that. That's a work in progress here. But
how long will you be down there? Because I'll be down there as well.
Oh, excellent. I'll probably come down Friday night. I reconnected with some old friends who have a house right there on the Jersey Shore. And it was kind of funny. It was pretty random how I got there. I mean, it was, you start to, when I was seeing 400, 500 a night prices at the budget hotel, I won't impugn or plug any hotels, but a very well-known hotel chain that should not cost that. I said, you know what? I think they moved. I'm going to call them. It was one of those things where we got on the phone call and just absolutely reconnected immediately. Went down, hung out. This was for the opening, the sort of official launch of the fixed odds in Jersey. And, had a great dinner Friday night, ended up hanging out late into the night Saturday night. And they were like, we want to come to the track. And I said, well, I've got just the opportunity. And the party hosting I did that day went well. So I think I'll get that gig again. And we should have a good time. So yeah, let's make sure to hang out. We can do some grilling and some whiskey tasting along the way for that weekend. And then I also have this insane idea that I'll float here because it's probably relevant to some of the people watching this show, whether it's live or on the replay over at the In the Money Media or Breeders' Cup YouTube channel where you can check it out. But, they're running at Monmouth on Mondays in August, which I love. So toying with the idea of getting a party bus from Saratoga and taking it down on at least one of the Mondays, if not all of the Mondays in August. Be like the old days where we used to drive down to Great Barrington Fair on the Tuesday, because of course we ran 6 days at Saratoga back then. And for the, it's like for those who can't get enough, if you need 7 days of racing, well, we can't do 7 in the modern game, but we can do 6 with Monmouth running on Mondays. So, party bus, cooler full of beers and sandwiches. And, if people are interested, let me know. The more sort of commitments I have for this, the easier it'll be to get it subsidized, which of course is the key. I said it to one of my friends who's probably playing in this contest right now. And he said, Dave Nichols, and he said, oh my God, that would save me the drive. So, I mean, that's, how sick he is. So that's good stuff as well. So anyway, yeah, but lots of Monmouth opportunities, and definitely a huge question to be answered about our man, Jack Christopher, on that day. Hey, give a plug to the work you're doing this weekend. I think we talked about it a little bit at the top of the show, Matt, but which races will you be covering, and where can folks find you?
4 to 6 Eastern on Big NBC. We have the Fleur de Lis, which is basically a rematch of the La Troyenne, where you've got Pauline's Pearl and She Dares the Devil. But you've also got Super Quick in there for Norm Cassie, who ran a hole in the wind in the DuPont Distaff on Preakness weekend. She earned like a 107 buyer, won by 14 lengths. And you've got a couple other really nice fillies and mares in that spot. The Kelly's Landing, which is, I think, probably the most wide open of the 3 races here from Churchill that we'll have on the broadcast. You can go, I think, 10 different ways in a 9-horse field or whatever it is. And then the Stephen Foster is going to be the finale for us as far as the broadcast is concerned. We won't get into the Princess Rooney. We won't get into the Smile Sprint, which is also an interesting race happening down at Gulfstream on Saturday afternoon. But those are the 3. We'll be over there. I'll have a write-up with some stakes action over on NBCSportsEdge.com sometime tomorrow afternoon. And you and I will be talking again for In the Money Plus, talking about some stakes action from the Twin Spires.
Love it. Excited about it. A couple of rapid-fire questions. Derek Vogt wants to know, Matt, has your interest and ability to play and watch golf, has parenthood gotten in the way of it at all? He says he's speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, I actually played for the first time since the baby was born a few days ago with my dad, because my parents were up at our house for vacation for a week, and it was quite rusty. It was fun, but it was quite rusty. And I'm hopeful as she continues to get a little more, a little older and a little bit more mobile, and or I shouldn't say mobile, but more. I don't know. I don't even know what the right way to put it. I mean, she needs 24/7 care. So, who knows when I'm going to be able to play.
It makes it tricky. How about your interest in watching? I mean, and betting? I mean, has it
even more so?
How's your form? How's your form been?
It goes up even more. It's actually been pretty good. I mean, I had some guy giving me a hard time about. I backed Webb Simpson 2 weeks ago for the first round lead. He was 4th. He was 2 shots off the lead, and then I backed him to win the tournament outright at 65-1. And he flattened out on Sunday, and some guy was like, "Oh well, at least you play with funny money." And I posted like a rebuttal, and I said, "Do you want to see my tickets?" And I posted them, and I deleted it. And I said, "That's bad form. Just let the troll be the troll, and we'll let bygones be bygones. You're better than that." So no, I mean, things have been good. It's just, I tell you what, golf is very much, especially big tournaments. It's like the Breeders' Cup. You've got great fields week in and week out. You've got super deep fields. And you can make a case for a player that's 100-1 just as much as you can make a case for a player that's 30-1, which makes it both maddening and brilliant at the same time.
It's an interesting gambling game for sure. Let's do this leaderboard and get out of here, because these guys clearly want to have a drink with me. So we got to get this. We got to get this rock and roll. I can't. I'll do the question as soon as the show is over. I need 30 seconds. So leading us after the 2 races at Belmont, we've got John Bull III, Michael Bailey, double-handed entry, 2nd and 3rd. Bill Duncliffe in there from the Can Do podcast. Brett Wiener, who was in the comments as well. We appreciate Brett taking the time out. Double-handed from John Gasper, who we'll see up in Saratoga. Tony Calabrese, the aforementioned Robert Capalbo, Mike Sutton, Kirk Rockwell, CJ Arriga, double-handed Greg Kingma. Interesting to see these same entry strategy. Very popular today. Don Marquardt, Matthew Abbott, Joseph Costello, Alistair Walbaum, Stephen Diaz, Don Brockman, and William Smith. And I think we're going to leave it there, Matt, unless you got any closing thoughts for the people.
All good.
All right, good stuff. We're going to thank producer Craig for all his help. We'll thank our friends at the Breeders' Cup, especially Haley Amos and Justin McDonald, Matt Bernier. Of course, we appreciated Haruhiko Matsuda. We really appreciated his contributions to the show as well. This show's been a co-production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side are our business managers, Drew Coatney, our chief creative officers, Jonathan Gitchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.